So today's agenda, we are going to be talking about how budgets work in Cougar Mountain Denali. We're going to talk about the Denali budgeting tool in the general ledger module, how to set up a budget using the tool, also how to export and import budgets into Excel, and then we'll go over the different budget reports that are available in Denali for you once the budgets are set up in your Denali system. Then after we're through with that, we'll do the questions and answer sessions for any questions that are in the chat, and wrapping up, again, try to get done by about 12:30 so you guys can get on your way. All right, so with that, we'll move right into our budget tool here in the Denali system. And anybody knows that to successfully run a good business, you have to plan and budget the finances for the business. And so Denali is set up in the general ledger module to help you with that. So we'll go ahead and switch over here to our Denali system here. All right, and we'll find that budget tool in the general ledger module. So what we've done is I've logged into the demo company here that I have set up on my system. You can log into your company file and you'll just click on the GL button to switch over to your general ledger module. All right, and once you get here to the general ledger module, the way to access the budget tool is right here, this little button that says Manage Your Budgets. You can also access it on the menu up here under the Account menu, Budget Management. So those are the options to bring up the budget management tool. Oh, something's getting in the way here. There we go. So we'll click on Manage Your Budgets here, and this will bring up our budget management tool. Now what I want to do is I want to import a budget that I've already got, open a budget code I've already got set up to show you how this budget tool works. So we'll go ahead and open one of our current budgets that we currently have set up in the system. And then once we're done with that, I'll show you how to create a budget. Now, as you can see, the budget tool brings in the general ledger accounts that we're going to be setting up the budget for. And then the accounts are listed here by number, or you can list them by description if you prefer. Just like a lot of the other search windows in Denali, you can organize the list however you want, by number, by description, by any of these other topics in the tool. Now when you scroll over at the bottom, these annual budgets are all grayed out, and the reason they're grayed out is because the tool is designed to create a budget for each period, which is like a monthly period on your fiscal calendar, or you can set up an entire budget for the entire year for each account. So if you're going to use the annual budget, you would just check the little box for which accounts that you're using the annual budget for. Once you've done that, then it unlocks these boxes here for you to put in your numbers for the budget. Go ahead and put in the budget numbers for those accounts. And we'll talk about that a little more once we're setting up a budget. But we're going to turn off the annual because we've already got this budget set up on a period basis. So to get to your periods, you would scroll over here at the bottom right-hand corner of the budget tool. You click on the little button to scroll over to get past the years, and now we start with our periods here, period 1 right here. And as you can see, since we're not on an annual budget, the periods are unlocked, so we can put our numbers in here. Now the way the budget tool works is you've got two columns where you can input data. You've got an estimate and you've got a budget. A lot of people wonder, why do we need two different columns? That's very handy because the way this is designed is you can put in an estimate number in the estimate column of what you think that number is going to be for that period. So that is your estimate for, in this case, sales, the general sales account, what revenue amounts we're going to see for period 1. Now the budget, what that is your goal. And that might not be the same as your estimate. You might be estimating, a little bit less than what the goal is, or maybe a little bit more. Hopefully for sales, for revenue, that would be nice if we got more than our goal. To exceed our goal would be great. But the budget is the goal, and the budget is usually set by the board of directors of your organization or whoever the boss is. They're the ones that decide what goes in the budget column. This is what we're budgeting in for revenue. And down here in our expenses, we're going to budget in the amounts for the expenses as well. And this is what the budget that is approved by whoever is in charge of your organization is, which is your goal for your business. That could be a different number than what your estimate is, and that's why we have the two separate columns there. When you run your budget reports, then it pulls the numbers from the budget column that is what shows up on those reports, because that is your company goal. That's what we're trying to achieve with our budget here. In expenses, our goal is this amount is most likely going to be the maximum amount for this expense line item right here in the budget. You don't want to exceed that. In revenue accounts, this will be most likely our minimum amount, because these are our goals, remember. We want to achieve this goal. If we exceed that for revenues, that's great. In expenses, if we stay under that number, that's great. We're within our goals. Now, the actual column here that you can see, that is grayed out, and you will not be able to input data into the actual column. The reason for that is because this column is automatically updated whenever transactions post to the general ledger module. Then the actual numbers that are posting to these accounts is what you see here in the actual column. So this is the actual revenue we have received, and this is the actual expenses we have received. Now be careful here. A lot of people see this parentheses on the revenue, and they don't see the parentheses on the expenses. Normally in the accounting world, parentheses means a negative number. But in the general ledger system, all the parentheses means, that just means it's a credit balance, a credit number. And for revenues, that's what we want. So when you see these numbers in parentheses, that is just fine. Don't worry about that. That's what we want, because that is a credit balance for the revenue accounts. The expense accounts, we see a debit balance, so it's not going to show those in parentheses. Because again, in the accounting world, debits are shown as positives, credits as negatives. That's just the way the accounting system works out, so that when it does the math, it can do the subtraction correctly on that. Now, on your budgeting system here, when you're entering the budget for your revenues, do not put the negatives or the parentheses. The system automatically accounts for that when it brings up the reports and when it puts the information on your reports. So you're just going to put the numbers that you want for that account in the budget tool, and don't worry about it whether it's a negative or a positive, unless, of course, you want a negative revenue or a negative expense that you're going to budget in. I don't know that anyone would ever do that, but if you do that, it's going to basically reverse what it's supposed to do. So just put in the numbers you want on the budget and the estimate amounts, and then the actual amounts will automatically figure the calculation based on the debits and credits as needed. For the budgeting tool, you scroll forward to the other periods, period 1, period 2, and of course with our fiscal calendar, we have a total of 65 periods, or 64 periods if you're on the 12-period per year system. So there's a lot of scrolling if you're going to do a 5-year budget plan. Most people, though, all you would need to do is just set it up for 12 periods, since you're doing it on an annual basis. And then what's neat about the budgeting tool is you've got options here for each period. I'm just going to select period 9 since we're there. Basically, all you would do is right mouse click on the period header, and you can transfer the previous year's budget to this year's budget. So what happens is when you set up this budget for the next year, if you want to just copy what happened last year, you just select this option here, and last year's budget will automatically import to this year's budget. Or you can transfer the actual amounts to the budget or to the estimate first, and then from estimates to budgets. So that's real handy if you're going to set up a budget based on last year's actual numbers. You basically, before you do your year-end close, you would transfer the actual amounts to the estimate column. Then you process your year-end, and now for periods 1 through 12, those numbers that were last year's actuals are now this year's estimates. And if you would like to do that for your budget as well, you would just transfer the estimates to the budget. So that is how the budget tool works. It's got a lot of great features that you can set up your budget with. So how do we actually set up a budget then? That is the question. So the way we set up a budget, I'm going to go ahead and select New here. What you do is you start with a budget code here in the budget tool. So we're just going to call this budget. That'll be our budget code. This creates a new budget that you're going to set up for your business and your organization. So let's give it a description. Demo budget, we'll call it, since our account is the demo account. Now it's asking here, what accounts in the general ledger are we going to be creating this budget for? You can put in the range of accounts you want to create the budget for with the starting account number and ending account number. Now the tool allows you to use any and all accounts that you have set up in your general ledger. By double-clicking on the field, it brings up the list of your chart of accounts here, as you can see. We can even create a budget for our balance sheet accounts if we want, our cash accounts, our accounts receivable accounts, our petty cash accounts, if we want to create budgets for the balance sheet accounts. But most people, they're going to just create a budget for their revenue and expense accounts. So what we do on that is we scroll down to the revenue and expense accounts right here, which usually for the account numbering system starts with 4,000 is the revenue. That's the first account. So we'll select that as our starting account. And our ending account is going to be the last expense account, which will be right here. So we select that one for the ending account. So now we've got a range of all of our accounts that are only the revenue and the expense accounts that we're going to include in this budget. Some other options you have is you can use the account filter to specify specifically which accounts you want to import into this budget based on the account filter. And the account filter here works just like it does in other report groups. You use question marks as wildcards, and then you use the number for the digit you want to import in. For example, if you have the second digit in your account numbering system set up for a specific department, for example, you would set it up this way. Question mark on the first digit means all accounts with the first digit are included, but it only accounts with a 2 and the second digit of the account number will be included in this budget. And the digits 3 and 4 will have all of those included as well. That's the same system that we use for our account filter when we're running reports. You can set it up that way for reports as well. But for now, we want to use all accounts. So we're just going to leave it with a star, which is basically a variable that includes everything within this range right here. And once we've selected the accounts we want to include in this budget, we click Add Accounts to Grid. And then it basically puts all of the accounts in the grid that are within this range right here. So now we've basically created our budget code. But this budget is a $0 budget. It's basically zeroed out. What you can do is you can go ahead and set it up. If you want to do it as an annual budget, you would just check this box for each account, like I was saying before, that you want to put in the annual amounts for. And then you put in your annual estimate and your annual budget. Let's say we're estimating $100,000 in revenue on the general sales account. And we're going to budget for $100,000. So as you can see, those numbers are the same. However, those of you who are running the system and running your accounting might say, well, I think that we're only going to do $98,000 this year. That's going to be my estimate, but our goal is still $100,000. So we put $100,000 in for the budget, and we're estimating we're only going to do $98,000. Now we come down to, and you fill in all these numbers for all the accounts that you want to create a budget for. We come down here to our expense accounts, the same thing. You know, our cost of goods sold, last year they were about $43,500. So I figure that's what we're going to do, but we're going to put a goal in as only $42,000. We're going to see if we can work with our vendors to bring our price down a little bit on our inventory. So we're going to set a goal at a little bit lower than what our estimate is. So you can set it up that way and create your budget however you need. And as you fill in these numbers, if you want to do all of your accounts as annual, you just check the boxes as you're filling them in, and you can put them in here. Now, the budget tool works on the 5-year fiscal calendar, so if you want, you can go ahead and create a budget for 5 years. You would go to year 2 and put in your numbers here. Go to year 3 and put in your numbers here as needed. Or if you're not doing it on an annual basis, you go down here to the periods. Now, the periods is going to be a lot more work because you're dealing with, in the periods, you are dealing with each individual monthly period. So you're going to be filling that in for at least 12 periods for the first year. So you're going to have 12 different numbers you have to put in on each account for the first year if you're doing it by periods. However, the advantage to that is it gives you a much more accurate budget. Instead of taking the annual amount, it looks at each period and puts in whatever you put in there. When you're running your budget reports, it will go with the period numbers that you put in for each period on those reports. Now, if you're using the annual budget, like we did on these accounts up here, then what it does on the reports is it just takes the annual amount, divides that by 12, and shows it for that period, the amount divided by 12. So it might not be an accurate number for that specific period. It's just basically an average of the annual amount. And so all periods will have the same amount for the budget when you do it by the annual. So you would go ahead and fill in all of your numbers on the annual basis or on the period basis. And as you can see here, you can mix and match these. You can have some accounts set up on annual, some set up on period. You just check the box for annual on the ones you want to set up on an annual budget. And then when you fill in the numbers, then you can save the budget here. Now, when you save this, it does not impact any of your accounts at that time yet. It doesn't show up on your budget reports. It doesn't show up on your account maintenance screen of what you've set up for the budget. All it does is it saves it for you because you might not be finished with this budget you're trying to create. You might have to come back to it later. So you would save that, and it saves that code in there for you to bring it up later. So when we click Save, now we've saved our budget code, but it hasn't impacted any of our numbers on our reports yet. It's similar to when you're working with other modules and the General Ledger module. When you enter a transaction and save it, it does not impact the accounts or the reports until you post the batch that transaction was entered into. Budgets are similar to that. And even though we don't actually post the batch, because it's not called posting when we're doing a budget, instead what we do is we save and attach. Save and attach is like posting this budget once you've got it completed. However, you can still make changes to the budget after you've attached it. If you make changes, you're going to want to save and attach again to apply those changes to your budgeting reports. So that's how you create a budget using the Denali budget tool. Now, a lot of folks that use Denali, they also have Microsoft Office or Microsoft Excel. One of the great things about the budgeting tool in Denali is you can export the budget to Microsoft Excel and then fill in all these numbers using Excel rather than trying to fill them in on the grid here. You can fill them in on Excel. You can put Excel formulas in place to calculate percentages to get the numbers you want to show up on the budget, and use all the advanced features that Excel has by exporting this budget to Excel first. Now, when you do that, you basically select the path of where you're going to export it to, which I've got that set here. You give it a file name here. I already have exported this once before, so. And then you click Open. This is going to say this file already exists. Are you sure you want to continue? Because if you export to a file that already exists, it's going to override the existing file for the new file when you say yes for the budget you made. Now, this is real handy. Process is complete. This is real handy if you just want to set up your budget code with the accounts but leave all the numbers over here, the dollar amounts, blank. Once you set up your budget code with the accounts, you can export that to Excel, and then now that that has been exported, we can go into Excel, go into where I exported it to under the folder it was in right here. We can go into our program here,
Double click on the export. It's a comma delimited file, CSV, so Excel is going to automatically recognize it. And now here we have our budget exported into Excel. There's our column widths there. So now in Excel, if you hadn't filled in the numbers on the budget tool, these numbers would be left blank. And all you see is estimate budget for the different periods that we have here. Now you can go ahead and fill in these numbers using Excel. And if you want, you can even create a formula on the budget to put a percentage based on what's in the estimate. I can say, okay, these are the numbers we're estimating, but we're going to budget, 3% over estimate for our budget. Create the formula, copy and paste it to all columns here, all cells in this column, and it'll automatically calculate those numbers for you as needed. Once you've got it all completed, you would save this file. Save it as a CSV file, remember, because when you import it into Denali, it will not recognize it as an XLS file. It has to be a CSV file. Now we go back to Denali, and now we can import the budget, and here it is. We've got our budget file ready to go. We've made our changes to the numbers using Excel, and then we just import the budget, and it says there's already a budget code that you're trying to import. Do you want to override what's there with what you've done in Excel? And we will say yes. So now we've imported our budget back into Denali, and then we still have to save and attach in order for those numbers to correctly show up on our budget reports as needed. So now we've saved and attached that budget code, and now we can run our budget reports. The budget reports are pulled up using this option here, Review Your Budget Reports, or you can get to the budget reports under the Report menu under Budget here. Now the budget reports, what you want to do is you want to set both the current period and the year-to-date period on the report. So let's say, for example, we're working in June, so we want to see the budget for June, but we want to see the year-to-date up through June as well. So on year-to-date, the starting period is going to be 1, ending period 6. If we do period 6 and 6 on year-to-date, it's going to have the same year-to-date numbers as the current period numbers on our report. And this is basically set up so that you can customize the report to do exactly what you want it to do. The year-to-date column on the report can be used for year-to-date, or you can use it to compare period 6 with, say, period 5. Now, year-to-date is not really year-to-date, it's just a comparison, period 5 and period 6. But what we're going to do is we're going to show you the example of using that column to show the actual year-to-date amounts. And we always like to show the account number on the budget report. That's optional. You don't have to check that box, but it is nice to have that so you know what you're working with. And then we got 3 different budget reports to work with. We've got the standard report, the variance, and the profit and loss. Now the standard report, what that looks like is just a basic budget report that shows all of our accounts listed. It shows the budgeted amounts and the actual amounts in the year-to-date. So here's our actual current amount. This is what we see. This is period 6. Here's our current period as we had selected in the parameters, and here's our year-to-date period. So in the current columns, it's going to be referring to this period here. In the year-to-date columns, as you can see over here, if I can get my mouse to work, there we go, it's going to be referring to this period right here that you set up on the parameters. So now we have our actual expenses, or in this case sales, actual revenue is what we're showing here, and we have the year-to-date actual revenue, and then on this budget report it shows our year-to-date budgeted amount. And then we've got the variance here, the difference between what we're receiving and what the actual budgeted amount is. So you see that variance year-to-date listed over there. So we're a little bit under budget here. We're $389 less than what the budgeted amount is. Now for revenue, that's probably not so good, but for expenses, that's great. We want to be under budget. But we got right here, we got the actual year-to-date here, the budgeted amount, and look at that, we're a little bit over budget on our expense here, so that's bad. We don't want to be over budget on expenses. So this gives you an idea of where you're at and how much you have left in the budget for that amount. That's what this variance is. It's what's remaining in the budget that hasn't been used yet. And when it's a negative, that means we've gone over the. That's how
that works. So the next report I wanted to show you here is the variance report. We are getting a little bit, we're about to run out of time here, so I'll try to hurry up here and just finish up these reports. But this is the one that most people like to run, because this report right here, it shows the current period in this section right here, and it breaks out the actual, the budget, the variance, and it even gives a percentage just for the current period. And then over on the right side, it does the same thing for the year-to-date period as you have set up in the parameters here. So this variance report is going to be your best report to do your comparison on the budgets, to show you where you're at for the current period only, and also where you're at year-to-date. This is going to be the report you're going to want to run on a regular basis to see how you're holding up to the budget as you run your business throughout the year. Real quick, the profit and loss report, basically this is just a report that shows the percentage of profit compared to the total net revenue. So it's similar to the regular standard budget report, but it puts in a ratio here. This account has 3.01% of the total revenue accounts. This one is 99.7%. Then we got some negatives here. That's why this one's 99 and this is 3, because we got some negatives. We got some accounts where it's a negative revenue because it's a sales discount. So that's how this one works. And the same with our expenses down here. This is our profit and loss that also shows the budget on here as well. So those are your budget reports in Denali. You can also go to the account and you can look at the budget on the account itself real quick here. So we'll grab our cost of goods sold account. That one works. And you can look at the budget here. This will show you the current budget that you have attached. Now these numbers don't appear until you attach the budget for each period. It'll show that here. And then you can also go to the period totals, and over here on the right side you have a budget amount for that period. On your period totals table, these are the actual amounts here for that period, and these are the budget amounts. So this is what you'll find in the General Ledger account setup screen. When you go to set up your accounts, you've got the period totals and the budget tabs that you can also bring up your budget data in. Now you can't change these numbers here. These numbers are not changeable here. If you want to change the budget numbers here, you would open your budget tool and make the changes there and then save and attach it, just like you do with transactions. All right, so with that, that puts us back, that completes the presentation. So we'll go ahead and answer any questions that you may have. Switch back to my screen here. There we go. Go ahead and wrap it up here and answer any questions that you may have in the chat. All right, here we go. So let me see what we have here. I know we're just about out of time, but I'm going to spend just a few more minutes answering these questions, so I'm not just going to leave you guys hanging. So it says here, can you have both annual values and monthly values? A question from Paul. With the budget tool, no, you can do one or the other. And the reason for that is because when you put an annual value in, it automatically calculates that as a monthly value for each period, which is 1/12 the annual amount. So you've got your option there. You can do monthly or annual, but not both. Question from Mike. When you have your budget in Excel, can you remove the columns that you do not plan to enter data into, such as the estimates column? Once you remove a column, will it give you an error when trying to import it back into Denali? Yes, Mike, you cannot remove those columns. You'll have to just leave those numbers as zeros if you're not going to use those. The reason for that is because a comma-separated file, a CSV file, is actually just a text file with commas to separate the fields. And when Excel saves that file after you've made your changes, it just puts it back into that text format, and any columns that are missing will create an error when you try to re-import that back into Denali. So just like anything else you're importing into Denali, the format has to stay the same. Just leave those columns at zeros and not use those. Now, in Excel, you can hide those columns, but just don't delete them. You can just, at the column header, just drag the column over to the left where it hides the column, and then you don't have to see them, but they're still there when you save the file. Athena has a question. Can you set up a budget with grouped general ledger codes? Basically, what you would probably want to do on that is you would set up your account numbers in segments, or have some kind of a numbering system for your general ledger account numbers that groups accounts based on one or more of the digits of the account number. Segments work really well for that. And then you can import the budget based on the segment. Like, say, if you had a segment 01, a segment 02, so these are two different groups, 01 for one group, 02 for the second group, then you would import all accounts for just the 01 segment. That would import just group 1 into that budget and leave out group 2. And again, another question, how about multiple grouped GL codes? You would probably use segments for that as well. And then you can import a range of segments to do the multiple groups. If you wanted to create a single budget for multiple groups, then you could set it up that way. Also, when you import your accounts in the budget tool, real quick, I'll show you that. In the budget tool, when you add the accounts to the grid, remember, you put your range start to end here, and then you add the accounts. Now, you could put the range for group 1 here and add to grid, and then come up here and fill it in for group 2 and add those to grid as well. For example, I'm just going to say, let's say we want to just add the revenue accounts first. We add those accounts to the grid. See, now all we're going to see is just our revenue accounts. But now let's add just the cost of goods sold accounts, but not the other expense accounts. And we click Add to Grid on those, and it keeps the revenue accounts. It just adds the other group to the same budget now. So you can keep adding accounts by range here however you want to continue to add what you want to add on just this budget you're creating. So that's how you would set that up. Switch back over here. And you can use the account segments to do the same thing there. Real quick, another question from Wendy. It says, can you show me how to get that last report you showed us for each account, please? Okay. So is that the budget variance report we were looking at? Let me look at that real quick for you. Exit out of here. We're not going to create this. So when we bring up our budget reports, it's right here. Review your budget reports. This is how you get to that. And then you're going to bring it up, the standard, the variance, or the profit and loss report. The variance is the one I put the emphasis on because that's got the most information. Any of these reports you can do it either way. Make sure you put your periods in, the periods you want to show on the report. And if you want to print the account number. But let's say you want to see it just for one account. You put it in the account filter right here. You just type in the account you want to see it for, and that's it. So now, we're just going to see this report for just the one account only. I'll show you that real quick here. And there it is. Now we've got the same, and any of the three reports you can bring up for just one account. It's just for the one account only is all we're seeing on this report. Nothing else is on here. You can do it for using the account filter. You can do it for a range of accounts. Let's say we want to see all the revenue accounts, but none of the expense accounts. And we know all revenue accounts start with the digit 4, so we'll put our wildcards in for the other digits. Now this report is going to show only the revenue accounts and not the expense accounts. There they are. These are all of our revenue accounts, but no expense accounts are on this report. So just like running any other report in Denali, you can use the account filter in order to put what you want on that report and show which accounts you want on the report. If you want to see all accounts like we showed before, you just leave that filter blank and it'll automatically just put the star in indicating all accounts. Now, again, it's only going to pull the accounts that are set up in the budget tool when you do all accounts. All right. Let's see, we have a question from Don. We use fund accounting, but only budget under the general fund, but the different funds show at the bottom of the report. I have been importing into Excel and rearranging, but that takes a lot of time, especially since it's important on a period basis. Any time frame of improving the reporting? I don't have an answer on that. I know that we work on any reporting improvements that we, suggestions that we get from our clients on a regular basis. And with the future updates that we have coming out, we should have some new additional features that they're working on that for you, Don, but I don't have a time frame on that for you. You might want to keep updated by checking the website and also talking with your sales rep on those time frames to see if they are going to be coming out with those features that you need there. But you did bring up an interesting point, Don, fund accounting. The budget tool in fund accounting will let you create budgets specifically by fund. So you can create a separate budget for each fund as needed as well. One more question here from Clark. Will there be a recording of this presentation? Yep, we are going to have that available for you as well. Now, Don is saying that you're saying you're having a hard time finding the report you're looking for. It should be there. If you're not finding it here under the budget reports here, if you don't find this button here, you can always get to the report up here under the report menu, and you click on budget here. This button should be available if you're not using classic navigation, so make sure you're not. If you have any further questions on that, Don, just give us a call at tech support and we can take care of your answers on that for you. All right, so with that does close up the presentation here. I want to thank everyone for coming and joining me today for this presentation. We kind of went over a little bit on our time, so I do apologize for that if you had anywhere you needed to be. But be sure to check it out for our upcoming webinars. Next webinar is going to be on January 7th. We're going to talk about how to process W-2 forms using Denali Payroll. And then we got a special webinar coming up a couple weeks later about how to close the year in your organization with Denali and how that works.